Well, welcome. And for those of you who are just joining us this week, I've been talking all week about the concept of walking in a loving relationship as husbands and wives. Particularly the passage that we're looking at, Paul focuses upon husbands loving their wife the way Christ loved the church. And I don't want wives to conclude that therefore they don't have a responsibility to love their husbands in much the same way. It's just that their love is shown through respecting their husbands, and a husband's love is shown through the things that we've looked at so far. First of all, appreciation, and then secondly, we looked at regard. Today, we're going to talk about affection. And this is an interesting dynamic in a relationship because two people can live together for many years, but one of the things that can begin to go cold through the busyness of life and through the distractions of life, and also comes with the aging, is we can begin to back away from affection. There was an interesting study done years ago that found that you could really measure the health of a relationship, a marriage relationship, by whether or not a husband and wife kissed in the morning. And in other words, every day when I go off to work or my wife goes off to work, we always kiss. The first thing we do when we get up in the morning, even before I get my coffee, if my wife's up before me, I'll go over and give her a kiss. And if I'm up first, then she'll come over and give me a kiss, and then we can get her coffee. That's kind of primary because when we learn this idea that sign of affection is a critical way of binding a relationship together, because what we find is that when people stop showing affection, you stop touching each other, you stop holding your hands, you stop embracing, you stop kissing, that usually is an indicator that there's something that's begun to grow up between you. There's a certain degree of contempt or a disinterest, and your primary affections have gone someplace else. And that doesn't necessarily mean there's another person in the relationship, although one of the clearest indications that somebody is being unfaithful in marriage is they become disinterested in physical affection. So I understand there are things that happen in people's health and illness, and those things always affect the ability to be responsive in that way. But I'm not talking about, heavy, intense sexual intimacy. I'm talking about just the tender, caring things we do, things as simple as touch. And I think this is one of the things I really hated about the lockdowns and even this idea of social distancing. The reality is that social distancing is really anti-social distancing, and people desperately need to have the touch of other people in their life. This came down to me one time when I was talking to a barber, and he said he had an elderly gentleman who would come in every week for a haircut, and he explained to him, he says, "You don't need to come every week. Your hair doesn't grow that fast." And the gentleman admitted to him, he says, "Well, to be honest, when I come here and get a haircut, it's the only time I am touched by another human being." And so it just really struck me how important that is, to have the touch. It's interesting that people who are in high stress and tense jobs go in and get massages, and I'm like you, massages I think are one of the greatest things on the planet, but the idea is that there's something relaxing in having someone else touch you, and especially when they do it in a way that's healing and comforting and assuring, and isn't a violation of your privacy or your boundaries. That idea of being touched by another person is critical. So, just coming and rubbing somebody's shoulders who's under a lot of stress, or I find even in the church, I love hugging other people just because I realize that you can't hug somebody if you hate them. That's the reality. You don't show that physical intimacy. Now, understandably, we have certain social protocols, and there's ways to hug, and sometimes it's more appropriate just to shake a hand, especially if you don't know the other person. But there is something invaluable in the idea when somebody loves you enough to embrace you with that kind of friendship embrace, where you realize this person values me. And so when we talk about showing agape love, it's the heart of it is expressed probably in just the fact that we show affection to the other person. I mean, I like words of appreciation. I love it when my wife says, you know what I like about you? I mean, I love to hear that kind of stuff. And I love the fact that she is so aware of things that I like and don't like that she goes out of her way, to make sure that there's bacon involved, whatever it is. But the idea of just having affection where somebody touches you. In fact, one of the things they found in this study about kissing, well, they found that couples who kiss 6 seconds as they start their day, they hold that kiss for 6 seconds, have a significantly higher chance of survival as a couple than those who even just give a quick peck and move on. So, that's something that is easy to do, but don't fall into the trap of saying, well, I just don't feel like it. Sometimes there are things we're supposed to do because it's the thing that we're supposed to do. And we understand that. I mean, I don't like changing a tire on a car when it goes flat, but the option is not very pleasant. And so therefore, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it. I don't like having to stop and fill up my tank with gasoline. There's so many things I can sit and say, I don't like doing that. I don't like having to stop off the store and pick something up because I forgot it or whatever. We do these things all the time. We do them because we're supposed to do them. We do them because they're necessary, they're important, they're connected. I absolutely don't enjoy doing my taxes, even though I have somebody else actually prepare them and submit them. My wife has to put all that data together. I have to collate it and arrange it, and then we have to schedule appointments so that they can go out and file our taxes. I don't enjoy any of that, but I have to do it. It's an obligation. And so, when you talk about, well, I'm so angry at them or I'm so resentful, I'm just not going to show them any affection. You're making a critical error in judgment, because there's no better way to get past those feelings than to really lay down your life and show that person the affection. When my wife and I have gotten into arguments, and believe me, we get into them as much as you do, I've found, and she's found, one of the easiest ways to bring that to an end is for one of us to go over and give the other one a hug. That it's just that fact that you're showing that affection, that communicates without words, saying, I still love you and you're still valuable. Even though you're obviously wrong and I'm right, I still love you, and I don't want this difference of opinion or perspective to become a barrier between us and stand in our way. And it's amazing how quickly the tension melts away. We're really made for affection. And sometimes I think about my relationship with God, and I'll say, God, I need to feel the touch of your Spirit upon my life right now. I just need to feel it in some way, that you'd show me that we're still good, that you love me and you care for me. I know that in my mind, but I just need some external evidence that assures me of that in my life right now. I just need to see some good thing, some act of kindness or generosity or grace towards me right now. And I found that God has done it over and over and over again, because he wants me to be assured in my heart that even though I may have done or said something really stupid, he still loves me. He hasn't gotten turned off by my stupidity or my selfishness, my pride, or whatever. The fact that I say things without thinking them through. And so that affection is a critical part of every relationship, and I would be remiss, not to say that. At the same time, I would say that if we look at what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, if there's no other reason that a husband can't continue in a physical intimacy in their relationship, then and yet you don't want to, I think you really need to really prayerfully ask God what the problem is. Don't just go to the other person and say it's your fault. We should step back and say, God, why is this happening? Why are we not sharing our bed together any longer? And God will begin to speak to you. And hopefully, at the very least, when you have that conversation with your spouse, you'll have it from a humble point of view and a gracious point of view, not one who's angry and irritated, demanding, and basically finding fault with the other person. I find, and this is, I discovered that we had 3 kids right out of the blocks, and I found that my wife, for the first 5 years of parenting, generally had one emotion. It was called fatigue. And so that's a big factor in all of this. So these are all things to think about. But affection is critically important, and I hope I've communicated in a way that convinces you that it's true. God bless. Tomorrow is Christmas Eve, and we're going to talk about the last aspect of what it means to have that God-like love for others in our life. Well, see you then.